and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. The recent events in Pakistan has pushed me to have actually thought what exactly is happening there. Apart from this big attacks, a lot of cross connection of data, if I may put it. So to make some sense of what exactly happened and how are the things in the country today. I have with me Lieutenant General Shokin Chauhan, someone who's been observing India's neighbors for a long time. He's a strategic thinker, a writer, and of course, a speaker. Thank you, sir, for joining me for this interesting discussion on the recent events in Balochistan.
Thank you, Aadi, for having me on your show. It's always a pleasure to talk to somebody who reads as much as we read and who is able to come up with cogent questions so that we can answer them. It's always a pleasure discussing with you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
And Balochistan is something that's happening right now. It's got Pakistan in a bind, and only the future will say how they handle it. So let's just hope what the issues are.
So to begin with the recent attacks, as you said, this is it's something that we will only come to know the after effects of this particular thing in the near future. But this attack is something new which has happened, and even the Pakistanis are acknowledging the difference in the kind of attack. What do you think exactly happened in that area, sir?
See, Adi, to understand, firstly, this is a tactical attack. So let's go back into history to understand what is the story behind this attack, right? I know you intend to ask me about the Balochistan, the BLA, Liberation Army. So let's just start from there. What are the Balochi people? Are they Pakistanis? Are they separate? Are they Pashtuns? Let's just go there because, I firmly believe that unless we understand the background of a situation, we will only be dealing with how many people got killed and why they got killed and how and why did the Pakistanis lose so many people and how did the Balochi Liberation Army, which had been hit very badly in 2013-14, how have they come back? And who's supporting them. But let's first just go to Balochistan itself. If you look at the map, Aadi, and I'd be grateful if you show the map. You could see the map and you see that Balochistan, who does it really border? Right? It's the northwestern part of Pakistan. The Baloch tribes have been restive tribes for the last at least 200 years. They didn't listen to the British. You'd be surprised that my grandfather had gone as a part of the British Expeditionary Force into 1921, 22, 23 to curb those tribes in Balochistan, Waziristan, Pakhtunistan, as they called it then. And there were a lot of operations, and during those operations, actually, the British realized that they cannot possibly bring these tribes to any kind of acceptance. So there was a level at which they agreed. They said, "Okay, you guys handle your part. We won't interfere with it, but let us deal with the issues of foreign policy, of defense." And that was the time when they were creating the Durand Line. Also, as you are aware. So, Adi, the issue is that the Balochis have always fought for what they've considered right. Whether it is to have their own Khan, or their own leader. They have not accepted anyone at any point. At no point have they accepted anyone just like that. And the Pakistan government, the federal government in Islamabad, is just one of the many people who tried to assert some control over Balochistan. So Balochistan has had a history of issues from 1923, 24, 25, 1938, 37. You would be surprised that even the Balochis actually did not want to join Pakistan. They actually signed the Pakistan federal government in 1948 actually signed a standstill agreement with Balochistan. Because Balochis were looking at full independence. And from there, because the British gave no option of full independence, they said, okay, we will join. We will join with Pakistan, but it wasn't accepted by the majority of the Balochis. So this uprising, it has from 1948 been a continuous once every 10, 15 years. This uprising has been there. You know, and this last one, of course, the Balochistan Liberation Army came up somewhere in early 2000. Now it has if you look at the background to the Balochistan Liberation Army, uh, probably the Soviets were involved at the raising of the Balochistan Liberation Army. Uh, there was the Taliban that was facing them in Afghanistan. The Soviet Union at that time wanted to create a problem within Pakistan so that they would stop supporting the Taliban in Afghanistan.
Mm.
So it is rumored that two Russian KGB gentlemen, uh, Misha was one of the names. He is supposed to have gone and contacted the Balochistan Students Organization, and from there started the raising of the Balochistan Liberation Army. So the initial help that was given to the BLA was actually by the Soviets.
Mm.
The initial setup, the initial logistics, the initial arms, ammunition, training, everything was probably given by the Soviets on this issue. After the Soviet Union left, you're aware that Russia kept itself involved with Afghanistan and even continued to create problems within Afghanistan when the Americans were there because they were determined to make sure that the Americans would suffer the way the Americans had made them suffer in Afghanistan. So I'm certain that the Russians have had a link here. Okay. So this Balochistan Liberation Army has gone through three phases. By 2013, 2014, they were at the lowest step. The Pakistan Army had launched a number of operations in Balochistan, moved a sizable strength of its forces there, and also killed their leader. After that, it's a matter of conjecture as to how the BLA has resurfaced and reinvented itself and has now reached a point at which they are threatening the existence of the Pakistan Army in Balochistan. But what was different about these attacks vis-a-vis the previous ones? The previous ones are they used to have attacks on convoys, on isolated patrols. But this one was an attack on a post, on two posts. So when every insurgency goes through a couple of phases, Adi. First, it goes through the phase of an insurgency where you are moving away and drawing the government forces, away from the center. But you are not taking on the government forces in a pitched battle. In the second phase, Adi, you become strong enough to start hitting the government forces in their defenses. So the first phase meant they continued hitting them, continued reducing their capability, their logistics, continued harassing them, but never having the ability to hit posts. The second stage of the struggle, when you become stronger, is this phase that is more dangerous. Because now the BLA has become strong enough to hit Pakistani isolated posts. No, whether 120 people have been killed or whether 20 people have been killed or whether that's a matter of there'll be no truth here ever. Neither will Pakistan admit the casualties. And the BLA anyway would like to expand the number of casualties because it gets them more support. But
True, sir.
what must be seen is that they've had the ability to hit Pakistani posts. Now, what will change here? The Pakistan army will be forced to bring in more troops. They'll be forced to create larger posts so that those posts can look after themselves. Bringing in more forces would mean that they will reduce the number of forces all over, along the Indian border. Now, Adi, you link it back to what Pakistan was thinking of doing with China on our northern borders. Okay, we've been talking of the 2.5 front issue, right? That Pakistan has the ability of bringing in greater forces along our western borders. China is tying up a fair amount of our reserves on the northern borders, and therefore, at some point or the other, Pakistan gets the upper hand. But with the Balochis creating problems in Balochistan, the reserve forces of Pakistan will have to be moved into Balochistan. That means the 2.5 front war will the ability of that 2.5 front issue to trouble us will sizably reduce. So this is why I wanted to bring to you this issue about why it is important for us not to look at the tactical battlefield, but look at the strategic battlefield. Look at the movement of an insurgency force that is moving away from drawing the enemy and from hitting them on isolated patrols and convoys to having the ability to hit a post and to hit 2 to 3 posts. This will get two other things into action. As they start increasing their strength, a larger number of the population will shift towards supporting them. As the shift happens, there will be greater number of people wanting to support. Now let's just see, because this is probably the next question you'll ask me, who's supporting these guys? Okay, let's just see who wants to support them. Okay, Pakistan's very quick about blaming us.
Yeah.
Whether we are supporting them or not is again a matter not known by anybody. There is definitely no evidence of India supporting the BLA. Definitely no evidence. But there is evidence of Afghanistan supporting the BLA.
True.
Will the Taliban support the BLA? Is Taliban supporting the BLA? This is Taliban time. They have their government in Afghanistan. And if at this time, Balochistan Liberation Army had the ability to hit Pakistani posts, then their nearest neighbor could be the only one supporting. So I would say that the evidence points towards Afghanistan actually supporting the BLA. Earlier, when Iraq was supporting the BLA, but Iraq is not in a state to support anyone right now.
Yes.
But Afghanistan definitely is. Who else could be supporting? Are the Russians doing it? One doesn't know. But Russia definitely has had a hand in starting it. Are the Iranians doing it? There is a Shia-Sunni angle. Balochis are mainly Sunnis. So will they support a Sunni organization against a Shia organization? I'm not sure. But the other thing is that there are also neighbors. And they're troublesome neighbors. And Pakistan does support Sunni groups inside of Iran.
Yeah.
Probably Iran could also be doing this. Could the West Asian countries be doing it? That's another issue. So what I'm saying is there's definitely foreign support. There's definitely an issue about the Balochis getting stronger. There's definitely a shift in the mass of these of the way the Balochis are carrying out the insurgency. and that the PLA or the Balochistan is moving to the second stage of a counterinsurgency campaign. In the third stage, Adi, the Balochistan strength becomes so much bigger that then they take on the federal government inside Balochistan. That's how the shift happens. So these are the issues I thought I'd explain to you as to what exactly could be the situation behind it, who exactly is involved, and why they're involved. But it's not new for Balochistan. It's something that they've been fighting for the last 100 years, and they will continue to fight. Knowing them, knowing the tribesmen of northwestern India and northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent, this strife has been is in their DNA. That's something that we should be very clear.
Of course, the it's got that basic, simple, instinctive tribal culture. And I mean, good, bad, or ugly, they are what they are. I agree with you in that aspect. Absolutely, sir. So, but there was a recent development that got brushed over with regards analysts who look at and analyze what's happening in this particular region. One of the snippets that came out talked about the BLA getting support from the Sindhu Desh, people. BLA also getting support from the TTP. That establishes your Afghanistan connection that you're bringing about. BLA in the beginning was pretty much not a self-sustaining sort of an organization, but they were not known for its connections outside Balochistan. This is probably the first time something like this is coming out. What do you think is the how do you analyze this entire thing?
See, like I said, Adi, the dynamics change. Why BLA is getting stronger is there's a shift. There's a shift in the thought process of the population. From being absolutely and almost destroyed in 2013-14 in a very successful operation that Pakistan Army had carried on in Balochistan, the shift is again happening. And the larger crux of it is, Adi, that the number of disaffected groups within Pakistan who are looking to put that axe inside the federal government will only increase. So everyone backs a winner. And if they feel that the BLA is now able to counter the Pakis inside Balochistan, there will be a shift of troops. That weakness, that gap that will come, that vacuum that will come due to the troops being shifted, will create in itself another power structure. And it could well be the Sindhu Desh movement. It could well be the other disparate movements all over Pakistan. Because one should be very clear that what Pakistan decided to do to us in Kashmir is going to be paid back in full measure. In the earlier days, we used to feel that a stable Pakistan is the best bet for India. Now the shift among the strategic community of India is shifting from saying no, a stable Pakistan will create a problem in India. An unstable Pakistan is a better bet for India.
Looking inward.
There will be greater chance of peace if Pakistan remains unstable than if it remains stable. So that issue has to be understood, Adi, because it's a great shift in our perception and the way we are going to take on Pakistan over the next 10 to 20 years.
True.
So, like I said, India will not be involved, or at least there is absolutely no evidence of an Indian hand. But there's evidence of an Afghani hand, there's evidence of foreign hands. It could be West Asia, it could be Afghanistan, it could be Russians themselves continuing to play games. It could be anyone, it could be the Americans. Because out here is also the third dimension, is China. While they build their BRI, very important part of that BRI is the Gwadar ports. And you know where Gwadar is? And will Gwadar be allowed to have peace? It is something that we should be very clear about. So will it mean that, will it mean China bringing in troops to protect the BRI? Will it mean a greater involvement of China? Because when you bring in troops, you're also getting involved economically. If you get involved economically, then where will China have to give up somewhere else? Because their resources are not unlimited. Right? You know, the BLA has said publicly that they were responsible for the killing of the Chinese in Gwadar, along the bus, along the road. And if that road starts getting interdicted, then Pakistan will just have to move into another point. It will be them protecting this road only. For us, Indians, this is a win situation because it means that there are less forces, less of the reserve forces against us. And that 2.5 front that we talk about may just be reduced to half a front. Because if China has got to make a success of the BRI, she will have to put in resources in Balochistan. And if they put in resources in Balochistan, Afghanistan will definitely have a problem. You cannot have the PLA so close to Afghanistan. They will not agree. Those tribes have not agreed. And they've been fighting for the last 100 to 100 years. And they know their own ground well. So
Yeah, that is.
I would say we are in for a lot of interesting processes, a lot of thought. But we should be very clear, the government of India and strategic community, as to where exactly we want to deal with Pakistan. Like I said, do we want to deal with the Pakistan that is insecure, that is unstable, or do we want to deal with the Pakistan that is stable? The earlier thought process was because they have nuclear weapons, because they have this the ability to create problems, that we wanted the nuclear weapons to be in stable hands, that we would say no, let the federal government be there. But we realized that the federal government, if they were stable, created a problem for us all the time. An unstable federal government, what can they do? But the world is watching because more instability comes. We will have to, at some time, the world will have to contain Pakistan's nuclear weapons. They cannot be given in the hands of unstable elements.
That is true. One of the most dangerous.
That we would have to be looking at very, very clearly, carefully. The community of the world, especially the big five of the UN, would have to be creating thought processes on this and alternative plans. So this is something that we need to be looking at all the time.
Absolutely. I think you've mentioned a nuclear nightmare scenario that a lot of
Absolutely. Yes.
people in the strategic community have nightmares about, literally. So coming to the attacks themselves, there's a story that I read about the way these attacks were conducted, the precision, and you've also mentioned that these attacks were very well conducted as per a tactical situation is concerned. For these, I won't call them ragtag, but close to ragtag sort of an army, to get floor plans of a place, to go hit them, to sustain an operation for 72 hours, seems to be, and this is what the news is all about, that has there been, I'm not saying a serving internal hand, but some disgruntled Pakistani army personnel who's kind of led this entire thing or provided information of any sort, because there's always that chink in the armor. We've seen it multiple times.
I have no doubt. Aadi, what happens in these isolated posts is, logistically, you depend upon the local labor. They would have definitely logistically asked the local labor to help them out, because these are isolated posts.
Yeah.
So firstly, the ground is fully known to the Balochis. The fact that these posts are isolated means that they can be isolated. And have somebody trained the Balochis? Have they given them more weapons? I have no doubt. Is someone giving them information, on the ground continuously as the attacks move? I have no doubt. Because today, with precision communication systems, with an ability to stream live situations, when you see the videos that have come out, it's obvious that the Baluchis are streaming these issues live. So there is no doubt that there is getting a lot of help. They're using high technology, and they're getting a lot of information about this. There could be disgruntled Baluchi soldiers inside the Pakistan army who's helping them out. There could be Baluchi politicians. There could be Baluchi leaders. There could be the neighbors of Taliban. There could be people giving them, because a lot of weapons of the Americans, I think you're aware, have actually been sold in Balochistan. They've been sold there.
Mm.
They've gone to them. Who could have given them? Only the Taliban could have given them in return for something else. So there is no doubt, Adi, that this issue is time will tell how Pakistan army handles this, and they're worried. Yesterday was the co-commanders conference.
Mm.
Right today, I think of Imran Khan and Jan Bajwa have gone to Balochistan. So there's no doubt about it. But they are worried. They're wondering what to do, how to control this issue, and how to move more troops. And they'll have to move their reserve formations.
True, sir. True. So the kind of sketchy reports that are coming out, one video here, one video there. There are morphed letters which are coming out about communication of the internal departments within Pakistan. There are reports of 195 Pakistani soldiers. That's the maximum number I've heard. Maybe true, may not be true. I don't know. Pakistani say 15. So this is the range that we're talking about. It's a large range for a terrorist sort of an attack. Then you have the army chief, as you said, along with Imran Khan, go over there. Rumor has it that they've offered a 15% salary increase to all those people there in the FC. That just tells you, with the kind of sketchy reporting, no live coverage, no reporter being sent there, it gives me a little bit of a doubt that is Pakistan trying to cover this up to, avoid showcasing a complete disaster?
Pakistan will always cover it up. It's a disaster. There's no doubt about it. And they will cover it up. But see how sophisticated the Balochi system of leaking information has changed the perception about their existence and about the way they fight. This is what you call infowar.
Yeah.
Right? If you're looking at an example of information warfare, we're looking at the example of how the Balochis have actually handled this part. So sophisticated, in such a sophisticated manner, that they have leaked just the right part, created just the right doubt in people's minds. And with this doubt, they have created a problem for Pakistan. A problem Pakistan, despite their ISPR, who is very quick to deal with a lot of issues, the ISPR has simply not been able to deal with the information and convert it to their, to their advantage. They've not been able to deal with it.
Yeah.
They're also finding reasons and situations as to what to do. So I'm glad that the Balochis have become smarter. I'm glad that they're utilizing technology. I'm glad that they're keeping the Pakistan army busy. I'm glad that this will force the Pakistan army to rethink its operations in the frontier areas. And if it comes out that the Taliban government of Afghanistan has helped the Balochis, it changes the perception totally about Pakistan's strategic space inside Afghanistan, which is why they supported the Taliban, and they paid back in full measure. Because Pakistan carried out this operation for the last 20 years. and 20 years before that against the Soviets. So they have to be paid back in the same measure, in every way. If you read The Bear Trap and the way in that book they carried out their operations there, well, it's easy to replicate. It's easy to do the same thing. So what I feel is that in the next couple of years, I think they're going to have a problem on the Durand line. The Pashtuns are not that easily placated. The Pashtuns will definitely do not want the Durand line. And if Pakistan starts building a fence there, they're in trouble. You can't divide communities. That fence has never been built ever amongst communities. Which is why, if you know, that we are not fencing the Indo-Myanmar border, because communities live on both sides.
Hmm.
So you can't fence a border where communities live on either side. That will always break. You need too many troops to counter the movement of people from one point to the other, and it will create too many problems and fissures within the society. So it's a very interesting phase of Pakistan's future as a country. And hopefully the effect will be felt in Kashmir.
Hmm.
Everyone felt that when Taliban came into power, that all these terrorists who were in unemployed terrorists now who were in Afghanistan would come towards Kashmir. These guys just might go over to Balochistan and create mayhem for Pakistan. It's a far story.
So they have old scores to settle, sir.
They have old scores to settle. So it's an interesting thing if you read between the lines.
Yeah.
And reading the tactical issues are unimportant based other than this happened, that happened, but the strategic issues, those are important.
Absolutely. The larger picture is always going to give you a better analysis of what the situation is.
So let's see how Pakistan handles it. Let's see, we'll come to know how many forces they have to move there and how they're going to try and reduce. And maybe if the BLA hits 2 more posts or 4 more posts, they might be forced to take certain decisions.
Well, so that is something that is, what I want to ask you. I basically want to just, put across a small thing. I mean, you mentioned that Pakistanis always like to blame India for this entire game. And fair enough. I mean, draw ki saadish hai, ye hai, wo hai. It wasn't even 24 hours before their interior minister came out and said this is done by India. It's funded by India and this, that, and the other. One of the biggest things that they're missing out probably, and I'd like you to kind of put your thoughts to it, is the factor that if such a thing has happened in one state where the success ratio is very high right now, whatever said and done, the world believes that the Pakistanis have failed in terms of protecting their people in those areas. That also gives a limelight to the other movements which are happening in Pakistan, the Sindh Desh, the TTP, of course, is harassing them day in, day out. There are protests which are coming up in so-called Azad Kashmir or POK as we know it. Do you think this is a moment where if the Pakistanis break their game in Balochistan, which will give an opportunity for the other insurgencies, other groups within Pakistan to take advantage of the situation? Leave alone India, leave alone Afghanistan. I'm just talking about the internal situation of Pakistan.
That will always be the case. Now, let's just link it to what's happening on our borders, on our northern borders. With the PLA having deployed there, it meant that the Indian Army and the Indian Armed Forces had to shift a sizable amount of reserves to the border. That means that if there was an issue within the country, we would be in a problem. But the fact is that in our country, nothing happened. Neither has Kashmir gone, nor has it become any worse. Neither has the Northeast become any worse. Neither has the Naxalite situation or the Naxal issues become any worse. So that means we have been able to contain these small problems that may be having. And the fact that the government is actually talking to people and wanting to sort out things is a great thing. If one can make sense out of why is PLA deployed there, what did they want to happen inside India, right? This would probably give you the answers. That when forces move, and if they were being held by force, that vacuum that was released would be filled in by somebody else, by forces inimical to India. The same thing will happen in Balochistan. The same thing when and in Pakistan we know that POK is held by their reserve formations. That the problems in Sindh or Sindh is also held by their army. And as more and more forces get sucked inside Balochistan, this will release the pressure on these insurgencies that are in the rest of Pakistan. And then Pakistan will have to deal with 5 more insurgencies, which will become stronger. And as they become stronger, she'll have to raise most troops, which she doesn't have money at all, or she'll have to find a way by which she can reduce the level of insurgency. I don't think that Pakistan will be able to contain the situation, but time will tell. But it's a dangerous situation, especially when they've outsourced the BRI to China. China has put in a lot of money inside Balochistan. As you know, there are a lot of minerals, a lot of gas, a lot of raw material, natural resources inside Balochistan. I am certain that the Balochis will not allow the Pakistanis or the Chinese to touch those resources. Because as they try and touch them, they're going to put in a lot of effort to try and protect them. And they will find it very, very difficult. It will become prohibitive cost-wise. So, like I said, it will definitely make Pakistan unstable. And whether that instability is good for us or not good for us is only time will tell. Pakistan has often, threatened the world that if we are threatened, we will use our nuclear weapons or we will lose our nuclear weapons. And these nuclear weapons will fall into the hands of somebody else. So they've always put the gun on their own head and said, "You've got to protect us or we'll kill ourselves."
Yeah.
Because the way we kill ourselves, our nuclear weapons go into the wrong hands. And then the world runs in and controls it. Well, they're on the way to self-destruction. Let's just see what they do and how we're going to deal with them. So, like I said, it's an interesting situation. What I'm happy about is that after being almost destroyed, the BLA, Balochistan Liberation Army, it has now come back to a point at which it's taking on fixed force. It shows a change and a shift in the insurgency. And it will only give them more fighters, it will only give them more recruits, it will only give them more money. And it can change a lot of things.
More confidence even to kind of,
Absolutely.
attempt more daring raids and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So I think you've given a very, very holistic picture of the situation, notwithstanding the politics which is happening there. And of course, there's a lot of name calling which is happening in India. And I don't think that is required at the moment. Loss of life is always tragic and sad all over the place. But, I can't help myself but saying the fact that they kind of wrote this for themselves in their own history. So they've supported these kind of movements all around the place, and now when it's happening to them, they kind of saying this thing.
It is bound to hit them.
Absolutely. And the BLA, as a matter of fact, if you read their press statements that have come out, they've been very precise in giving their statements. That's something for a so-called insurgent organization.
Absolutely.
The Chinese putting their hand inside would be, as I was just saying, strategic suicide. and it's something that, as you say, we'll have to see how the situation goes forward. What kind of power do these guys take, sir? Sir, closing word as to what do you foresee in this particular region? Do you think they are going to ramp up, and the kind of confidence level any group would have gotten after an operation like this?
There's no doubt, Adi. This will happen. The BLA will become more confident. The people will move towards them because you know that Balochistan, almost 73% are ethnic Balochis.
Yeah,
that's a very very large population base, and they've been fighting the Pakistan federal government. So Balochistan, as you're aware, is 44% of the landmass of Pakistan. It's easily the largest state in Pakistan. Easily the largest state in Pakistan. Not many soldiers come from there. The Pakistan Army recruits more Punjabis as compared to any other percentage. So there will be a problem about language, there will be a problem about loyalty, there will be a problem with a lot of issues when Pakistan tries to deal with it. And the other joker in the pack is China. They put in a lot of money into the Gwadar project, into the BRI. Everything that comes in from China would come through this road to Gwadar.
Yeah.
We thought it was a done deal, but the Balochis have proved otherwise. If they start hitting this road, and if the road starts getting stopped, then the chances of China moving anything through this and having, not to pay for the security of this road will be history.
It doesn't make sense.
Their thought process would have been totally. And if they're going to put in troops to protect this road, then the value of BRI is finished. Because the whole idea was to utilize the shortest route to the sea, to Gwadar, and to then push their, all their logistics to that, put their ships in Gwadar and be able to, interdict the Indian Ocean. That was the Chinese plan, but it doesn't seem that easy now. It doesn't seem that easy. So it's an interesting situation. Let's just wait and watch. My prediction would be that Pakistan would move more forces there. They would try and replicate their success of 2011 to 14. There would be much more force and violence used. More force and violence used would create more problems within the population. How will that affect their relationship with Afghanistan is another matter of conjecture. We're not very sure about that. So there are going to be issues. But it's going to be a tough decade for Pakistan because they can't get hold of the Balochis.
That's true. That's true. That's true. Absolutely. And I don't think there is anybody who can deny that. I don't think even the Pakistanis would be able to stand up and say, no, you're wrong. They themselves acknowledge the fact that there is a huge problem and a time bomb that they're sitting on, which can explode anytime.
Yeah.
Sir, thanks so much. I think this has been a very insightful discussion. You brought out certain points that at a larger strategic level, I think even the Pakistanis are missing out. Their analysts are not talking about the long-term impacts of these kind of attacks, the long-term impacts of destabilization of such a large province of this thing. And, Imran Khan can keep running to China for, strengthening of the CPEC, but till the time this...
But there'll be a point at which China will not be able to pay.
True. I think that they're there.
BRI is not doing well anywhere. It's not doing well in Burma, Myanmar. It's their push into Southeast Asia has not been successful.
Africa as well.
Their linkage to Europe has to go through Afghanistan. There's no other way.
Thank you, sir, for joining me and taking me through this, I think, very interesting development within our neighborhood. India needs to keep an eye on it, and to understand what are the long-term implications on Pakistan so that we can protect ourselves more than anything else. Till next time, sir, for another subject, another day. Jai Hind, sir.
Thank you. Jai Hind. Thank you.